This was about a couple of years ago now, pre-COVID, and I was the only man there. And I was the complete opposite of Fuchi Ren's point saying I feel my age. I'd never felt younger because I was 40 plus, but there were the aunties in there, you know, the hardcore heartland aunties. And I thought, like you, this will be a cakewalk.
Right.
You know, 5 minutes, I was dying, right? They're doing all that downward dog and this and that. And my body hasn't moved that way.
Exactly.
Firstly, I'm a praying mantis anyway. I'm a beanpole. So I haven't got that low center of gravity that the aunties around me had. So they're downward dogging it and this one it and that one it. And I can't do it. I've got like women almost twice my age showing me, no, I'm more like this out, like this out, like this out. Could this be any more humiliating? So I empathize.
Well, Renee, the head of the Pilates instructor, she was, giving us a nice briefing, and at the end of it, she's, thanking everybody for coming, and she was wonderful. She was super supportive, and she said, "This just goes to show, no matter how old you are or young you are," she kind of slips that in as she's looking at me, right? You can do this. It's no problems. I was like, "Oh, thanks, Renee. I appreciate that." But anyway, it was good fun and a great workout, and they're rolling those Pilates classes out all across Virgin Active throughout Singapore. There are 6 locations. Now, Chantel Travers is a longtime friend of the show.
Yes, she is, and
she owns Emperor's Attic, which is antiques over in the Tat Boon. I want to get that name of that building right. Let me just get it. Tat Boon. The Tan Boon Liat building. There we go. And she has come up with, those of you who are watching on Facebook Live can see this, a new Christmas book. What would it be like if Singapore actually had snow at Christmas? And some of us who grew up in colder climes, myself included, find this just a delightful children's book that she has put together called Singapore Christmas Delight, and also a nice tea towel for the holidays with a holiday poem on it. But the thing that really caught my eye about this is Chantel is donating part of the proceeds to Acres.
Lovely.
And she's already, between her 2020 and 2022 Christmas projects like this, she has raised almost $25,000.
Love the illustrations. As you know, I'm a children's book author myself, and I love the illustrations. They're fabulous. I'm just holding up a few here. Hornbills at Christmas. I like the way she's incorporated native biodiversity into the different pages, and also local architecture in the Christmas setting. I think it's fabulous. Acres, of course, big friends, big supporters of this show. We've had them on many, many times. No, it's a lovely book, A Singapore Christmas Delight. And where is it available, Glenn?
It is available in Tango Mango in Tanglen Mall. It's available in the Emperor's Attic store at Tan Boon Liat building, and also emperorsattic.com.
Wonderful. I'm going to pass this on to my wife. She can read it with her K2 children, the perfect age group. She's a teacher, of course. Thank you, Chantel. Very nice indeed.
Very, very nice. And another one of our good friends of the show, Dr. Jade Kwa from the KK Hospital. She was in talking to us during the pandemic, and she is now working with the Mental Health Film Festival in Singapore, the 2022, which just kicked off last night. They're going to be having events at Leisure Park Kelong, at the theater there from the 4th until the 13th of November. They have a short film youth competition. Anyway, all around mental health, because as we know, people have been struggling over the past 2 years and trying to find that right space to decompress and address their whatever mental health concerns they have.
Fabulous initiative, fabulous festival. You can go online, mentalhealthfilmfest.sg, get all of the details there. Well supporting. I'll put it in the Facebook feed. I've taken part in some of these film festivals before. I did one that was associated with special needs, and this one on mental health. Equally important, equally valuable, and well done, Dr. Jade Kwa. This is the kind of thing we should be supporting, both on this show and in Singapore generally.
And if you know somebody that you think might be struggling, this is a great way to take them to a film, right? That might also have another message that they might see and hear in a different way, and be willing to entertain the thought of getting help. That's what this festival is all about, getting people the help that they need if in fact they need it. So thanks to Jade Kwa for that and letting me know that was coming up. I think that's going to be wonderful. So, at the Kelong Leisure Park.
Wonderful.
Now, speaking of mental health, I needed a mental health check last night after seeing the new movie Black Adam.
No good.
Well, I saw it with my kids, Kate and Max.
Yep.
Okay. we love The Rock,
We do.
right? He's very good, and all the other actors, which were actors in the film that I had not seen before.
Pierce Brosnan is in it,
except for Pierce Brosnan,
Yep.
who is looking very elder statesman actor like in this,
yes.
right? The beard. He looks like, he reminded me of kind of taking Sean Connery's place when
Yes,
Sean was a little bit.
They do
older,
that
right?
post-bomb. They have that trough because
Yeah.
they're a bit neither here nor there. And then they get to their late 60s, 70s, and they can reinvent themselves as character actors.
Exactly.
Which is what he's doing now.
Yeah. But okay, it's a superheroes DC Comics thing. They make a lot of jibes at the other comic heroes and stuff, and The Rock is basically brought back after 5,000 years to save the day.
Right.
I won't spoil it any more than that. But the challenge I have with these movies, and we've seen it over the past 5-6 years of these superhero movies, is it's nonstop loud.
Yep.
From the minute it starts until the end. And like, there's no pacing. There's no, I don't, you know, you're a student of film.
You are showing your age a little bit. I agree. It's just nothing but noise. But no, I'm with you on this one. I'm with you on this one.
I think a good movie should kind of ebb and flow, right?
Absolutely.
You've got your highs and your lows, and a minute for the audience to kind of,
absolutely
soak it in.
I agree completely. No, I agree completely. My favorite comic book heroes are where less is more. I like Iron Man 3. I like Black Widow. You know, the ones where it's not so bangy crashy, as they call it. A little bit of bangy crashy is okay, but too much, it's relentless. It's almost like 2 hours of heavy metal. You need a little bit of classical in there somewhere, a little bit of jazz, you know, mix it up a bit. Mix it up a bit. I'm with you. And the interesting thing about Black Adam is it's just this ongoing cycle of Warner Brothers still not sure, DC Warner Brothers, what they are, because they went down the dark route initially with the Dark Knight trilogy, which was fabulous. And they thought, that's the way. So they just kept getting darker and darker and darker with Man of Steel, Superman. Then the Avengers comes out, their rivals, and it's light and it's funny and it's quirky. So they completely try and reinvent themselves, make it quirky, make it funny, bring out movies like Shazam, amp up the humor in Wonder Woman and things like that. And then they get accused of going too far the other way. So now they're bringing it back, Black Adam, darker again. It's almost as if whatever the other guys do at Marvel, they just follow rather than be assertive enough to say, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our brand, our template, our tone. And then if you like it or not, they just keep playing catch up all the time with Marvel. Very interesting to see how it does at the box office.
It's a very different character for The Rock as well. It's a darker superhero kind of character for him.
And does that work for his character, for his style of acting?
I will say, I think he does it well, but we were also kind of always waiting for him to bust out and do something funny. You know, the peck pop, the the different things that he does that are just really fun to watch on some of his other movies, like the Jumanji movies.
Well, he's fabulous in that. When he plays off a foil like Kevin Hart, and he's doing the whole self-deprecating thing, and you've got Hart there to send him up, up his pecs, his size, his frame. He's great then, and he's one of the best as a self-deprecating, actor mocking himself.
This is not that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting, because I think in a week or two you've got Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, coming out, which is going to be a direct competitor for the entertainment dollar. So they need to make their money now, Black Adam. And early box office reports, not great. Okay, but they'll do well to even make a profit.
Well, I'll tell you, we were at the Plaza Singapore at the cinemas there, and there were maybe 20 people in the theater
on a Friday,
maybe 25. I thought, I was booking yesterday afternoon. I thought, we're never going to get tickets, right?
Yeah.
Place it was wide open, wide open, which I thought was a telltale.
Briefly,
moment.
That's another issue for Singapore generally to maybe talk about. Is I went to see the Pandemonium End of the Rainbow, which I told you was fabulous.
Yeah.
I have been to the cinema once. In my anecdotal estimation, audiences are definitely down. I still think there's a reluctance on the part of the average Singaporean family. I think there's still a mindset, well, I could go to the cinema in a crowded room and there's still COVID variants around, or I could wait a month and watch it on streaming. I do think there's a big part of that in people's thinking. But let us know what you think. Facebook Live, MoneyFM 89.3. Are you happy to go to the cinema, to the theater, or are you happy to wait for Black Adam and the like to go on streaming? Let us know, because I still think there's a little reluctance to head back into crowded on the part of Singaporeans generally.
Look at the number of people that are still wearing masks outside and in places where they don't technically need to wear masks, and people are concerned.
Yeah.
So that's
I
good.
just want to give a shout out because you have spoken about this many times.
Sure,
It's
what's
on
that?
the page one lead today in the Straits Times. One of your pet peeves and mine is some of the reckless driving,
Oh
shall
my
we
gosh,
say,
don't
of
get me
delivery
started.
drivers.
Oh,
However,
what do we
and I
got?
did say this to you before, there is a caveat. The customer is not always right. I'm a big believer in this, right? 70% of food delivery workers in Singapore earn less than 3K a month, working more than 44 hours a week.
Wow.
So they're, sailing towards 50 hours a week,
Wow.
barely scraping 3K a month. And a third, 1/3 have had an accident. Now, I haven't read the whole story. I'm going to. The pressures and demands that these guys are under, I agree with you about the reckless driving. I do. But the pressures and demands they are from the, let's say, the archetypal Kiasu customer are relentless.
Yeah.
If they're a minute late, they get it.
Sure.
If they're caught in traffic, they get it. If there's a rainy day like today and they have to stop, they get it. It's very hard for these guys, I think, in Singapore, where it's the demands are relentless.
Yeah, believe me, I'm empathetic toward that because that's
Tough job.
Riding a bike in Singapore to deliver stuff. Now,
Yep.
of course, a lot of people have motorcycles as well, but
Yep.
you got the rain, you got the heat, you got the traffic, you got it's hard. We got a great show lined up for you today, folks. Steve will be with us in just a minute. Steve Okun talking about
Is Steve here? I hadn't noticed.
Yeah, he's talking about North Korea firing 6 more missiles toward Japan. The US midterm preview, of course, coming up next week, and Benjamin Netanyahu back pushing Israel to the hard right. Is this a trend that we might see in the US as well? We want to talk to Steve about that.
Yeah.
In our 10 o'clock hour, we are going to talk about a social enterprise in Singapore, HMI Institute, that is providing initiatives helped at easing the burden on home caregivers. And there's so many home caregivers in Singapore. So it'll be interesting to hear what they're doing to help. And
I think we must give a shout out. We got a special intern in this morning to work on our social media, unpaid. He's called Steve something, Steve Okun, I believe. I don't know who he is, but he hasn't stopped commenting for us. He's monitoring the feed. He's
Facebook
commenting
Live
on the feed. So if you're listening to that young intern, Steve something, thank you so much. Your work is fabulous.
At 10:30 today, there's a new company called Terrascope, and they actually go and help companies figure out how to decarbonize their supply chain, right? So it's not enough to just, drive less and do things right at home.
Yeah.
But if you are a company buying a lot of products on your supply chain, you want to figure out how to make that supply chain better as well.
And talking about those scope 1, 2, and 3 elements that Steve Okun brought up himself, he's everywhere.
Yeah, that we mentioned. Well, we mentioned that we were talking about that last week as well.
Scope 3, just to set it up for our listeners and viewers, scope 3 contributes to up to 85% of emissions, according to this report. So very interesting to get into that.
Yeah, Maya Harry will be with us, the new CEO of Terrascope, at 10:30. And then in our 11 o'clock hour, we're going to go to Brunei. We're going to go to Dubai, not Brunei, and talk about what's happening there with the tourism business. A lot of folks are traveling back to Dubai.
Yes.
And we have Rashid Al-Arha, the country manager for Emirates Airlines here, and he's going to talk to us about that. And 11:30,
this is a lovely
segment that is really near and dear to both of our hearts.
Yeah, this is a lovely one. The International Seakeepers Society has just held their first ever Ocean Collective Summit about the state of the oceans and climate change here in Singapore. It concluded last night. National Development Minister Desmond Lee was there, and we've got the board member and the chairman and president coming on to talk about what they discussed about Singapore and the state of the oceans around it. Final word to Fuchi Ren.
Huge stuff.
Who said, let Steve Okun have more airtime, la. He came in since 9 a.m. So poor thing. Haha. Fuchi Ren, we don't ask him to come in. He just shows up.
He's got no place else to go.
He's like that guy who quits a job and still keeps coming to the office. And everyone's scared to say something.
Those of you that remember An Officer and a Gentleman, that was the famous line. I got no place left to go.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so now you're comparing him to Richard Gere. I mean, his ego's not big enough.
That might be taking it a bit too far. But all right. Anyway, lots coming up, folks. We're going to take a quick music break. Then we'll be back with traffic and Steve Okun in our international news view. Don't go away. Saturday mornings on Money FM.
Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 noon every Saturday. Only on MoneyFM 89.3. MoneyFM 89.3. Traffic.
There's been an accident on Loyang Avenue near Loyang Avenue, Old Tampines Road Junction. Vehicle breakdown on the TPE towards the SLE before Tampines Avenue 10 exit. Another vehicle breakdown on the AYE towards the MCE after Geelong Town Hall exit. Obstacle on the PIE towards Twas after Eng Newell Avenue. Avoid lane 6. Another accident on the PIE towards Changi Airport at ECP City exit and heavy traffic on the CTE and the AYE. A lot of accidents this morning, folks, so do drive carefully in the rain. Okay, causeways. Woodlands, 23 minutes into JB and 29 into Singapore. And Tuas, 23 minutes into JB and 20 minutes into Singapore. It is still raining, so drive carefully, drive slowly, and keep it right here on Money FM 89.3.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
International News Review.
Welcome back to our International News Review here on Saturday mornings with Steve Okun. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, GVZ. Good morning, Ned Ryerson.
Ned Ryerson.
I take it. I don't even know what he means.
Was it?
You don't know Ned Ryerson?
He's from
Groundhog Day. Well, that's when
yeah,
the guy goes up to the Bill Murray character, Phil Carter. You know me. I'm Ned Ryerson.
Yes.
You don't know Ned.
Right,
You're Ned Ryerson.
Thank you very much.
International best-selling author, Ned Ryerson.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take it. Okay, thank you very much. I thought it was a bit of an insult, but
Going deep,
deep cut.
And a quick shout out to Rohit, who I met in person, came up to me at the AmCham launch. He asked a great question of Minister Fu with all the sustainability work he's doing. He said the three of us, he discovered us during COVID, helped him pass the time, and continues to listen. So right at 9:30.
Awesome.
9:30 is when he hits Facebook
Glenn,
Live.
do you ever get the impression that Steve is Ringo Starr trying to take over the band? Because he's getting more and more every week. It's becoming his show, his section, his thing. He's taking over the band here. I think there's a push for leadership. He wants T-shirts now. He wants the polo shirt with the branding.
I think Yoko has been talking in his ear.
You'll be screeching into the microphone next.
All right. Yeah. Okay. We got a lot to talk about. First off, I mean, I don't think this has made enough news this week. 6 missiles, including one that was believed to be an ICBM, being lobbed over Japan from North Korea. I mean, this has been happening now for years, as we know, and there's been no de-escalation despite recent efforts to do so. Take us through what we know about these tests and what the current state of that testing program is.
Well, polycrisis is the new word that I've discovered and loved. It's a word that was determined by Adam Tooze, who's a professor at Columbia. I think he came up with this a few years ago. So a polycrisis is a situation where you have individual discrete crises which are simultaneous, and then they intensify as they collide with one another, resulting in dire and deadly disruptions. And we are in a situation in this world now where we have we're in a polycrisis situation, and the polycrisis include climate change, global inflation, food and energy shortages, Russian invasion of Ukraine, China under Xi Jinping and what may happen with Taiwan, US-China decoupling and the Cold War that could come, the potential unraveling of the democratic system in the United States.
Is there anything else?
It's not North Korea. North Korea is not, when you put it in the scope of things and you ask, North Korea is not really a polycrisis because, as you mentioned, this goes on and on and on all the time. And yes, we don't certainly want to see, North Korea lobbing, missiles, but do we really think that North Korea will do a first strike nuclear attack against South Korea, Japan, potentially the United States? We don't. Why? Because in the words of the US and South Korea defense officials, after these attacks, right? If there were a first strike, this would result in the end of the Kim Jong-un regime by the overwhelming and decisive response of the alliance. So on my list of things that I worry about, North Korea lobbing missiles is probably 10 or 11, unfortunately.
You probably wouldn't say that if you lived in South Korea or Japan, I suspect. But does it relate to that point, Steve? Great word, polycrisis. And to Glenn's point, because of those issues around the polycrisis, it hasn't had the attention that otherwise it might have had. What is that the reason why he's done it? Why now? Why now?
Oh, well, he did it now for a very clear reason, and that's because the U.S. and South Korea just had one of their largest scale military exercises over the last few years or so. They had 1,600 U.S. and South Korean flights, 240 warplanes. Donald Trump put an end to these when he was trying to negotiate unsuccessfully, of course, with Kim Jong-un to get the North Koreans to give up their nuclear program.
Right.
So those failed. And it hurt U.S. in South Korea, readiness. And so you need to be ready. You need to be able to show North Korea that if you do strike, we are ready to come in and, and retaliate in a way that you will not survive. That's why these exercises are so important. This is Kim Jong-un's response to those exercises. He's done it in the past. He'll do it again, but you've got to keep these exercises going so we don't get the nuclear strike that you do worry about, certainly in South Korea and Japan in particular.
Good follow-up from our regular contributor, Don Pierce. Hello, Don. He says the real issue, missile launches were not accurately detected and tracked. That is the true crisis here. What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's what South Korea and the United States, Japan need to show, in particular the U.S. and South Korea, that we are ready. If something comes in, we are going to wipe you out. We are going to have such a deterrent against you that you're not going to take the strike. So without doing these readiness exercises, it could lead to Kim Jong-un thinking, well, maybe I could do something and survive it. And so, again, there isn't, of course, you need to have these exercises. You need to show you have the deterrent there to prevent that first strike from happening. But again, on my list of crises right now, again, I'm not, of course, in Seoul, right? So on my list of crises, this is not even I don't even know if it's in the top 10.
But then,
and that's how bad the world is right now.
Look, we saw this happen with Saddam Hussein, gassing the Kurds and doing this. Where is the red line, right? Is it when he actually hits another country with a missile? Or in the meantime, he's building capacity, just Iran and its nuclear program, the building capacity, building the ability. And so before you know it, a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, he's going to say, guess what? We've got 20 ICBMs, with nuclear warheads on them. So now you got to listen to us, right? So where do you draw that red line and when to stop somebody that you think might do harm to others in the neighborhood?
Well, the red line is very clear. I mean, any aggressive military action, against South Korea is going to be met with an aggressive, a massive retaliation. So that's where the red line is. And that is why it was so important, to use your analogy, when Saddam Hussein invaded a neighbor, that you had to go in and stop him. So when he committed crimes against war crimes against his own people and include the Kurds within the borders, people let that go, and maybe they shouldn't have. But you have that red line when you invade another country. I mean, if Kim Jong-un were to take a missile into Japan or Korea, he knows what would happen, which is why he's never done it. Why these exercises are so important, but why, again, it's not part of our poly crisis that we're facing as a world right now.
Can we go to
I was just going to say very briefly,
Yeah.
On your poly crisis comment, even the red line is up for grabs at this point, isn't it? You talked about Gaddafi, Gaddafi and Hussein, invading a foreign nation. It's going on right now. The red line hasn't moved there with Putin. We've got issues in our region, Myanmar, so on. So the red line very much seems to be up for grabs and debated depending on the geopolitical concerns and issues of the day.
And the worse these crises intersect with one another, the more difficult it becomes to enforce those types of red lines. And that's why the Russian invasion of Ukraine is increasing, right, other crises that we have, of the food shortage, the energy, an energy crisis, immigration, which is causing a lot of the issues in the UK. And now you're having an immigration problem coming out of Ukraine. How long is that going to last? Are you going to be able to take in all these Ukrainian refugees when winter comes and energy is so expensive, if it's available at all? So yeah, that's where all these crises intersect, and why a poly crisis is so dangerous. Look, governments can handle one crisis. The United States, handled the Civil War. I mean, obviously, more people died in that war in the U.S. than in like all other wars combined. But the U.S. came out of the Civil War. The U.S. came out of the Great Depression. The U.S. comes out and the whole world comes out of World War II. Coming out of the poly crisis we have now is much more difficult.
Yep. All right. Let's move on from there. The right wing moves into Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu will retake power as the prime minister there after 5 elections in less than 4 years. This sounds like in other countries in Europe that we know of. What is the significance of his retaking power at this particular moment in time?
Right. I mean, here's a leader who who lost power under a cloud of corruption and political dysfunction. A lot of it of his own doing. Well, guess what? Guess what we're facing in the United States, right now, which may happen in the next,
and the UK,
in the next 2 years.
Name your country.
A lot of it is the same dynamics. What happened in Israel is that there were perceived threats to Israel's Jewish identity and to their personal safety. And so you had, and in addition to that, you had an independent Arab party becomes a small part of a coalition. So what happens? The Israeli far right says, we need to protect who we think we are. We need to protect who we define our country as. And so they go into a far right government. And it's this one could become a polycrisis. We'll see. I mean, because part of the issue that you have with Netanyahu is, can you still have a two-state solution where you now have a far right parties make up the coalition? Before, when Netanyahu led, he still had more moderate and centrists as part of that coalition. That's gone now. It's all far right. So you have that one question. But then now, look, Netanyahu is the one who negotiated the diplomatic accords and created those diplomatic relationships with Bahrain, Morocco, the UAE. And so Netanyahu recognizes the need for Israel to be able to have friends and economic relations in the Arab world. So maybe that'll be a check on him. So this is what we've got to see, what happens between the far right and the domestic constituency, and what Netanyahu knows they need to do internationally. And if they go too far right domestically, do they lose all of those international gains that Israel has made in the last couple of years? And look, give them credit to Trump and Trump and Netanyahu helped make that happen.
So how do international parties respond to this moving forward, especially if you've got Biden post midterms looking a little bit more fragile? If he loses one or both houses, how does America and the rest of the world deal with Israel moving forward?
Well, I mean, that's the State Department came out after Netanyahu won with the far right government, and he said that the State Department spokesman said, we hope that all Israeli government officials will continue to share the values of an open democratic society, including tolerance and respect for all in civil society, particularly for minority groups. So that's what certainly the United States is going to be watching in the Biden administration. How does the Netanyahu government treat that 25% of Israelis who are Arabs? Not look, the West Bank is going to be a different issue, but how are they treating the Arabs in Israel who are Israelis? That's the thing that I think the United States is going to watch. And then then you'll and that's certainly what the other governments in the world are going to watch.
We cannot ignore Iran as well, because Israel is certainly going to be putting pressure on the U.S. and others to enclose Iran and make sure that they don't further develop their nuclear program. And
this is why you have countries like the UAE siding with Israel because of Iran as well. Now, does this mean that there's a possibility that the Israelis and the Saudis can have the type of relationship that the Israelis have been developing with the UAE? This may put that on hold, but now you have Saudi Iran and Saudi Russia going on in OPEC and not, in cutting production against the wishes of the United States. Coming back to the word polycrisis, is the Netanyahu government going to put Israel into the polycrisis camp where it hasn't been for the last couple of years?
Yeah,
I'm just thinking very briefly on the point you make about polycrisis. This week alone, you've seen Israel shift towards a far right government. We know what's going on in Russia. Iran, Glenn has just mentioned there. FIFA has come out this week and said, you cannot stick your oar in when it comes to Qatar. So that's a version of nationalism. It's Qatari's way or the highway. You had the British Home Secretary turning up in a Chinook helicopter this week outside a migration center that happens to be near where my mother lives. This real show of almost right-wing nationalist force. Trump is all over the news. You talk about polycrisis, Steve. How worried or concerned should we see about this clear trend towards nationalistic far-right politics across the world?
Very.
I mean, it's just a continuation of what we've seen for the last
this is a real
6 years.
discernible shift.
It's not
now.
a continuation. It's a worsening. Yeah. It's because all those things, right? So when you have this backlash against immigration, if you have food shortages, that is going and people are going hungry, you're going to have crisis, but you're going to have a food refugees. Yes. That's going to exacerbate the immigration problems, and you're going to have energy refugees and climate refugees. That's why these crises, and why I love the word, although frightened by it, of course, polycrisis, the interaction between them, and when they bump up against one another, they make the others worse. And so the food shortage is going to make nationalism worse, and the nationalism is going to make economics worse, and it goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
And then you get invasions.
Let's lighten the mood, Steve, and talk about the
We'll
U.S.
try.
midterm elections.
Yeah, we'll try. This
Steve
shift
Okun,
from globalization to nationalism. Let's talk something positive.
Steve Okun with us, of course, a senior advisor at McClarty Associates. All right, give us the up. We got 4 minutes left. The update on the U.S. midterms happening next week. Are there new polls out? Is there new indication of what's happening?
Look, Trump and abortion are not going to save the Democrats from history. Certainly not, at least in the House, right? The historical precedent is that the midterm elections punish the occupant of the White House and his party. And between 1934 and 2018, the party in power lost an average of 28 seats in the House. That's probably exact. If that's not the exact number, that's going to be a close number to how many seats the Democrats are going to lose, and it's going to sweep the Republican in. Will it be as bad as what happened to Bill Clinton in 1994 when he lost 54 seats? You know, what's going to happen, you know, and to George W. Bush, where he took a thumping in his word, Obama took a shellacking in his words. So the Democrats are going to lose the House. And why? It's because, look, the Democrats in the country have historically bad numbers right now. You know, Biden's approval is only 42% positive, 53% negative. So he's negative 11. The congressional approval, only 21%, half of what Biden has. Only 17% of Americans express satisfaction with how things are going, and 17%, the lowest in history. If you ask Americans, how are things going in the U.S.?
Oh my
17, gosh. Only 17 say good.
Okay, briefly, why?
Right. Why? Inflation, immigration, crime, all the polycrisis that we're talking about, the complete, you know, the dysfunction that we have, the hyper-partisanship, the near overthrow of the government in January 6th. You put all of those things together, and this is a historical low. Now, Gallup's been tracking this number since 1994. It's never been lower, where only 17% of the country expresses satisfaction with how things are going. That is why the party in power is going to lose the House. The only thing that may save the Democrats in the Senate and holding on, where it's tied right now 50-50, is because of the candidate quality of the Republicans, the ones that Trump endorsed, because as unpopular as Biden is, Trump is equally unpopular. And so Trump can drag the Republicans down and not have them pick up the seats they should have been picking up under historical numbers.
Wow, that's a nicely depressing way to finish it. Well, before America descends into civil war, I'm desperately trying to find something positive. How do you still fit into a shirt that is clearly 30 years old? There's a testament to you.
This one is actually 26 years old.
26 years old, it still fits.
This is the shirt that we. So when I was in the Clinton administration, went out and we
Why don't you explain what it says for those on the radio?
This shirt is after Election Day in 1996, and it says, "Welcome home, President and Mrs. Clinton, Vice President and Mrs. Gore." So, you know, the administration, we fan out across the country. Of course, the president was in Little Rock. I was in New Jersey doing Get Out the Vote. So the day after the election, we all came back to the White House. We had a big party on the South Lawn. We all got these T-shirts from 1996. So this one is actually 26 years old.
Still fits him like a glove, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, let me just remind everybody, next Saturday, we will have Steve back on and do a post-election wrap-up. We're also really happy to have Angela Mancini on with us as well from Control Risks. So she'll be with us to give her perspective with Steve on what the results look like from this midterm election this coming week. And I think we roughly know what's going to happen. We don't know to what extent it's going to happen.
And look, when the Republicans get the House, we are going to hear a lot about Hunter Biden and his laptop, and we are going to hear a lot about China. And the Republicans are going to be investigating businesses and what they're doing in China and why they're in China. And so this midterm really has a lot to do with Asia. And if the Republicans get the Senate, then Donald Trump's return to the White House is more likely than it would be otherwise. So a huge midterm election to be watching for those of us in the region.
So have a jolly Christmas, folks. Let's prepare for Armageddon.
There you go. All right.
Poly crisis. We have to prepare for the poly crisis.
Thanks so much, Steve. We will see you next week.
Next week.
All right.
International News Review.
Heavy departure traffic at Woodlands Checkpoint due to tailback from Malaysia. Delays are expected and travelers are advised to check traffic conditions before embarking on their journey. Motorists are reminded to maintain lane discipline and cooperate with officers on site. Please follow ICA Facebook for more updates.
I'm Ziaul Raushan. All eyes will be across the border this morning as campaigning for Malaysia's 15th general election is set to take off nationwide with the nomination of candidates for 222 parliamentary wards and 59 state seats in Perak, Pahang, and Perlis. The upcoming election is expected to see a multi-cornered battle with three main coalitions and dozens of independent blocs vying for power. And it is likely to see close to 1,000 nominations submitted on Saturday for the parliamentary seats and hundreds more for the only 3 out of 13 state assemblies that chose to hold concurrent polls. The remaining states have chosen to wait till 2023 before holding their elections, as annual monsoon rains are expected to hit the country from next week. The confirmation of names that will appear on the ballot papers is expected before noon today. FairPrice is set to offer a 1% discount for 500 commonly bought items for the first half of 2023 in all its physical stores as well as its online platforms. The discounted items consist of both house brand and non-house brand products and includes rice, oil, meat, and household cleaners. FairPrice said that the discount will allay concerns about rising cost of living, adding that it is meant to offset the GST increase from 7% to 8% that starts in January 2023. Seniors can now look forward to more activities to ease their loneliness and social isolation, thanks to a new $1.35 million fund that community care organizations can tap on. At the launch of the fund on Friday, Chief Executive of the Agency for Integrated Care, Tan Kwang Chiek, said social isolation among the elderly is a key concern as it is linked with poor physical and mental health. Set up by the AIC and the Community Foundation of Singapore, organizations can apply for a grant of up to $50,000 for each project, which should encourage seniors to be active, connect with others, and keep learning. The opening of a dedicated train testing facility in Tuas, the first of its kind in Southeast Asia, has been delayed by a year. The integrated train testing center is being built in 2 phases and was slated to be fully operational by the end of 2024. The first phase, which includes the construction of a high-speed test track, was supposed to be completed in the 4th quarter of 2022. It is now expected to be completed in 2023. Phase 2, which involves the building of 2 other test tracks, workshops, and an operation control center, will be ready only in 2025. As widely forecasted, Elon Musk has wielded the axe on Twitter employees across the world, including Singapore. Though it is unclear how many Singapore employees were laid off, the Straits Times understands that the job cut spanned various teams, including the engineering, sales, and marketing teams. And in an internal email seen by the Straits Times, the company said the cuts are an effort to place Twitter on a healthy path. A second email later notified employees of their fate. To sport, and football's governing body, FIFA, has written to all 32 competing teams at the upcoming World Cup, telling them to now focus on the football following a controversial build-up. Host nation Qatar has been criticized for its stance on same-sex relationships, its human rights record, and its treatment of migrant workers. The letter urges that football should not be dragged into ideological or political battles, and it should not be handing out moral lessons.
Those were your news headlines from the Straits Times. This is Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station. Time check on Money FM 89.3.
10:04.
Weather.
The Met Service is calling for rainy conditions to clear in the coming hours, and we should have a partly cloudy afternoon across the island. High today will be around 30 degrees, low overnight 24 degrees. For tomorrow, Sunday, expect afternoon thundery showers with a high of 34 degrees. That's your Money FM 89.3 weather. Enjoy your weekend.
Traffic.
And there's been a vehicle breakdown on the PIE towards Changi Airport before Engyu Avenue. Avoid lane 6. Another accident on the PIE towards Changi Airport after Toll Guan Road exit. Avoid lane 3. Heavy traffic in the CTE tunnel towards the AYE at Cairn Hill Circle exit near Glenn's house. And roadworks all over the island as expected. There's still rain in the air, so drive carefully and drive slowly. All right, Woodlands, 30 minutes into JB and 26 into Singapore on that particular causeway. Tuas Second Link, 26 minutes into JB and 20 minutes into Singapore. It's still raining, folks. Drive carefully. Eyes on the road. And he is with us right here on Money FM 89.3.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. Helping you grow your money on Money FM 89.3. Money FM 89.3. Financial updates from the Business Times.
I'm Chua Tian Tian with some of the market stories that made the headlines this week. The US Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by 0.75 of a percentage point yet again on Wednesday to keep runaway inflation in check. Now, the move, which was widely expected by markets, took the short-term borrowing rate from near zero in March to a range of between 3.75 and 4%, the highest level since January 2008. Now, going forward, the Fed said its battle against inflation will require borrowing costs to rise further, but signaled that the central bank may be nearing an inflection point in what has become the swiftest tightening of US monetary policy in 40 years. Speaking at a news conference after the policy meeting, Fed Chair Jerome Powell made the point that even if policymakers do scale back future increases, they were still undecided as to just how high rates would need to be to curb inflation and were determined to stay the course until the job's done. And Singapore will work with the central banks of France and Switzerland to use wholesale central bank digital currencies to make cross-border transactions faster and safer. Called Ubin Plus, the project will explore the exchange and settlement of Swiss franc, euro, and Singapore dollar wholesale central bank digital currencies. Speaking at the Singapore FinTech Festival on Thursday, the Monetary Authority of Singapore's chief Ravi Menon said the move came on the back of the success of Project Ubin, which started in 2016. Now, from 2016 to 2020, Project Ubin explored the use of blockchain and distributed ledger technology for clearing and settlement services. And finally, let's take a look at how the Singapore stock market ended the week. Singapore shares recovered some ground on Friday alongside most regional peers after a rout sparked by the Federal Reserve's half-hearted dovish stance. The Straits Times Index rose 0.9% to 3,130 points as traders trod for value after Thursday's sell-off. Some 1.65 billion securities worth 1.26 billion Sing dollars were traded on the local bourse as gainers outpaced losers 347 to 218. It has ended in positive territory 4 of the 5 days, with the STI having gained 2.3% over the week. And that's your finance wrap on Money FM 89.3. I'm Chua Tian Tian.
Those were your financial updates from the Business Times. This is Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station. Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to our 10 o'clock hour Saturday mornings here on Money FM 89.3. Glenn Van Zutphen and Neil Humphreys with you all the way up until noon today. It's 10:09 and the rain is still upon us over many parts of the island, so do be careful if you're driving and out and about. An unusual number of accidents you were commenting earlier.
Yes, always. I try to keep the traffic upbeat. Yeah. Obviously, I can't.
As much as you can.
I can't if there are accidents on the road. There are at least 3 or 4 just in the last half an hour alone.
Wow.
Couple that with the roadworks across the island and congestion in the likes of the CTE tunnel. Yeah, just be careful, folks. You know, slow and steady wins the race, as my wife likes to say.
You know, our high today is only supposed to be 30 degrees, which, you know, in a normal country, in a normal part of the world, you're like, that's really hot. Here, it's like actually pretty chilly.
Yeah, certainly chilly this morning. Certainly chilly this morning. I tell you that won't be chilly. Qatar, Fuchi Ren, one of many comments. We'll get through as many as we can.
Yeah.
Speaking of the World Cup, Neil Humphreys, any chances you will be jetting off to Qatar to provide coverage of it? Fuchi Ren, no. And I'm not that disappointed.
And no.
Yeah, I don't really want to. I don't think I'm speaking out of school to say that. I did go to Brazil for 6 weeks. Absolutely loved it. One of the highlights of my professional career. I will be covering it. I will be writing columns. I will be doing podcasts. I don't think there are many people queuing up to go to this particular World Cup. Latest news this morning, just for anyone paying attention, they are now paying fans to attend from England and the Netherlands. They are They are literally being bought.
Wow.
So the fans are being bought by the Qatari government to attend the World Cup. But of course, they've got to behave a certain way. They've got to drum certain songs. They've got to. I'm not making this up.
So they're getting their flight and their accommodations,
Yes.
and they're getting money on top of it.
I assume, yes, there was a story in The Guardian. I think they get a per diem, a bit of an allowance, food and drink and accommodation, flights taken care of. But of course, they'll have to behave in a certain way. Look, I don't want to be negative again after Steve's poly crisis, but it is kind of related to it. This geopolitical situation that's playing out.
Yeah.
Russia's World Cup was almost teetering on the brink of people's tolerance levels for where the global game is going. I think Russia plus Qatar has sent people over the edge. Like, no, the corruption is so entrenched, so endemic, so obvious. We have had enough. I honestly, anecdotally, Glenn, the amount of journalists, fans, regular folks I've spoken to around the world who just could not care less.
Really?
Absolutely.
Do you think it'll change though once it gets going?
To a degree.
You know what I mean?
To a degree, it always does.
I
heard the similar things before Russia. And the same with the Beijing Olympics. We can go on and on and on. South African World Cup and so on. Yes, once it starts, there is a difference. This is the first World Cup in the winter. Now, remember, another corruption element. The World Cup was sold, the bid was given to Qatar on the promise that it would be a summer World Cup because they're never a Western summer World Cup.
Right.
Qatar got FIFA to change it because it's too hot.
Right.
They would have footballers dropping down dead because it can reach temperatures of 50 degrees inside a stadium. You cannot play any sport in 50-degree weather. So it's being sandwiched between the major league seasons around the world. Footballers this week, Glenn, are dropping like flies. Asia's most famous footballer, Son Heung-min, South Korean icon, fractured his eye socket this week. Now, ordinarily, he could recover in time. The thing starts in 2 weeks. He's never going to recover.
No way.
So too many injuries, too much fatigue in the middle of the season. Well, what do you guys think? Money FM listeners and viewers, what are your thoughts on the World Cup? I would genuinely love to know. Are you excited? Do you want to watch it? Are you indifferent? What are your thoughts on Qatar? Do let us know. Comments on Facebook Live, Money FM 89.3.
Great to see all of you on with us this morning. Ian Chan, Don Pierce from the East Coast, Athanasios, Rob Salisbury joining us from down under Australia. Another trip. It's his second home down there, right? Rob is always down there.
And just to briefly on that
Enjoying
point,
the good life.
Rob's point, the Socceroos, I'll just leave it to the listeners and viewers to find it. But the Socceroos released a video. The Socceroos are the Australian football team. They released a video that has gone viral this week talking about tolerance and empathy and which communities should be tolerated and we should be empathetic towards. You see where I'm going with this during the World Cup. It's gone viral around the world.
Interesting.
And that's why there's been a FIFA backlash. You should not be commenting about political issues, blah, 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 blah.
Of course.
Yeah, so the Socceroos have led the way on that one.
Yeah, Athanasios Sakonas is joining us again, as always, on Facebook Live. Good to see you. And he's giving a shout out. If there's anyone interested in Singapore history, there's a public talk on next Friday night, 6 p.m., at the National Library Board on Kranji and the Kranji history of Kranji. So that might be in terms of Remembrance Day and World War I. So if anybody's interested in that, 11/11 is the armistice.
It is indeed, yes.
What
we call the poppy season. They often wear poppies because in the First World War, a lot of the no man's land battles were fought in poppy fields of Western Europe. Hence the poppy symbol today. There are places now, even in Singapore, you can buy the poppies. All money goes to the soldiers' funds and the various remembrance funds and so on. Ian Chan has followed up from a conversation we had in the previous hour about movies. And are you willing to go to the cinema during the COVID era or play safe? Ian Chan says, I finished catching up all my latest releases from the SQ in-flight entertainment during my business trips. That's one way to do it. Certainly, Ian. Yep, absolutely.
That definitely can be done.
Get your money's worth. Get your money's worth.
Angela Mancini is joining us. Hi, Angela. She says, looking forward to seeing us next week. Yes, we are looking forward to seeing you on the International News Review next week as well.
A comment for you briefly. Don Pierce, crime is not a crisis in the US. It just gets more publicity. Glenn Van Zutphen, discuss.
I have seen, and Don puts a Pew Research organization chart in there, and I have seen that as well. The stats apparently indicate that it is no worse, or apparently not worse now than it has been in other times. So I think it depends where you are looking. I think it depends, specific locations, for example. Look, we all know that we get the distilled version
That's
of
what I was
what's
going to say
happening
to
in the
you.
US
You know,
overseas.
if I talk to my wife about, for example, Abbey Rose going to university in the US, she's
Yeah.
like, guns, crime. I said, you've got to stop watching The Wire.
Right.
You know, not everywhere is a housing project in the Eastern Seaboard. But
our
but
friend
it's not all the Gilmore Girls either.
Yeah, our friend Roshan, who reads the news for
Yes.
us in the mornings. Roshan's going to Los Angeles and San Francisco
Nice.
in a couple of weeks' time with his wife. And he's like, should I be worried? And I said, well, look, you know, you got to be careful where you go. You know, don't leave your belongings in plain sight in your car, in your rental car. Somebody's going to break the windows and steal it. And just be careful. You know, you got to remember there's 300 million Americans living their lives in perfect safety and peace and harmony every day.
Middle class Americans, I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
Sure. Well, you know what I mean? Without being victims of crime. Let's
Right.
put it that way. Lots of people in the US never ever have an experience with crime.
Yep.
You know, and we do see the worst. Now there is some bad stuff that needs to be addressed, but I think generally speaking, if you're smart, you know, don't. I said make sure you don't put your phone down to chope a table, because it will not be there when you get
Spot
back.
on.
I guarantee.
Spot on. This is the contentious, controversial part. Singaporeans do pay attention to this. We are spoiled in Singapore. I got a very relevant story. It happened just last week. A good friend of my wife's, a teacher. I met her this week. She was very distressed. Why? Because her Singaporean raised daughter, I mean Singaporean effectively, was on the tube train, the London Underground, just last week in London, and a gang of thieves stole
Wow.
her phone. So I said to the mother, where was the phone? She just had it resting on her lap.
Duh.
I was like, this is not Singapore. You're not on the MRT.
Yeah.
I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong, but
Yeah.
it's the reality of
Yeah.
urban living.
Keep your zipper zipped. Keep your
bags close,
Yeah.
keep them over your shoulder, everything. I mean, this is basic stuff. We are spoiled here.
Yeah.
You can leave a mobile phone on a chair to chop a table.
Yeah.
Don't do it elsewhere.
All right. Stay with us. We got a great guest coming up right now from the Institute of Health Sciences. Let me say that again. Institute of Health Sciences, HMI, and CEO Chin Wei Jia is coming up right now.
Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 noon every Saturday. Only on Money FM 89.3. Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome back to Saturday Mornings. Glenn and Neil with you until noon today. There's a new community initiative by the HMI Institute, that is the Institute of Health Sciences. Whew. Let me start that again. There are some new community initiatives by HMI Institute, which is the Institute of Health Sciences, owned by Health Management International, dedicated to providing healthcare training in Singapore to those who are in-home providers of healthcare to their families. Joining us now to talk more about that is the CEO of HMI, Chin Wei Jia. Welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good morning, Glenn. Good morning, Neil.
I'm sorry, I'm a
Good
bit tongue-tied this morning on saying
It's a long
HMI.
morning.
Oh boy, I apologize for that. Tell us about HMI and what you do.
HMI, we're a healthcare services company with hospitals, specialist centers, clinics, and of course our social enterprise, HMI Institute. We're in Singapore and Malaysia with presence around the region. So we're pretty much a healthcare company, but we believe that what we can do so much more for the community, and therefore our institute, the HMI Institute, where we celebrated our 20th anniversary just on Monday.
Wonderful.
Well, congratulations.
And I believe you're Singapore's first dedicated healthcare training provider. What does that mean, and what do you actually do?
Well, we've been doing this for the past 20 years. So our social mission is really together building a healthier society. So through the Institute, we are actually doing a lot of training for people who are interested to enter healthcare as a profession, as well as working with healthcare organizations, from the acute to step-down sectors, to train people to upgrade in their careers. So very, very focused on healthcare education and training.
Wonderful.
And this, you have some new initiatives that are helping home caregivers, and we know
Absolutely.
that many people do have generations of family members in the home. first of all, do we have any statistics on how many people are caring for elders, let's say, for example, or special needs family members?
Great question. I think when we became a social enterprise and really focus our efforts behind it, we actually looked around the market and we're trying to see where the gaps were. Right, we're a healthcare services provider, so we know that when the patients are in the hospital or in the clinic, we have the doctors and nurses to take care of them. In Singapore alone, we have about 15,000 doctors, 43,000 nurses and midwives. And the estimation by CNA last year was that there are about 210,000 caregivers. At home.
210,000.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's
so there's at least
fivefold.
210,000 people needing help, but probably more, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. So we felt that there's just so much more that we can do because we train professional healthcare personnel, and we're taking some of that knowledge, repurposing it so that it's easier and easier understandable, right, by people without healthcare experience, so that they can better care for their loved ones at home.
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, my mother is a full-time home caregiver for my stepfather. You've had experience of this, of course, with
my mom and
with
my
your
dad.
mum and everything. It's a
Yeah.
wonderful thing. 210,000 people are in a similar situation. And who are these people? Are they domestic helpers? Are they relatives? Are they all of the above?
It's a full
Right.
range. Yeah, I think it's all of the above. But what we felt was that I had the benefit, right, of working in healthcare and really, learning so much from doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, dietitians. And this is some of the knowledge that we hope to share through our Care Buddy community initiative.
Fantastic. We're speaking with Chin Wei Jia, the group CEO of HMI Institute of Health Sciences, about some new programs to train in-home care providers. Give us an example. Let's say I am taking care of an elder parent. What can I access from HMI to learn more about how to do that better?
Yeah, well, of course, we have formal training programs. So that's something that's completely separate. The Care Buddy Community Initiative is something that we're doing for the community, with the community, right? And free of charge, accessible to the general public.
Wow, that's great.
That's really our part of giving back to society. So, outside of the formal training programs, which I actually just listed on our website, we are actually going to be developing an online platform called Care Buddy. So it's carebuddy.co. And that's something that we're going to launch officially next year. But in the meantime, we do have some health information on it, but we are actually developing this site together with partners. For example, the Singapore Hospice Council, NKF, the National Kidney Foundation, Dementia Singapore, and actually many more, including our own healthcare facilities, One Care Medical and StarMed Specialist Center. So we're actually getting doctors, nurses, allied health professionals who are passionate, right, about sharing their knowledge to come on board, share information, and hopefully reach out to as many people as we can.
What do these free courses look like? For example, my mother has dementia, and I'm caring for her.
Yeah.
How long is the course? What does it cover? Not necessarily what does it cover, but you could tell us that too.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing is three things. Okay. First, we're going to create this online platform with
carebuddy.co.
Yes, carebuddy.co. We're going to put content, training content, videos, articles, all that kind of information for things all the way from the activities of daily living. How do you support that as a caregiver? To things about caregiver support, mental, well-being, and other types of topics. So that's going to be online. We're going to be working with our partners in the communities, the social service organizations, to roll out training for volunteers, so that we're really in the community, in the neighborhoods, and those will be short training programs to give caregivers that overview and information of what they should know or what they should ask. Right?
So is it like an hour program, 2 hours, a half day?
It will range, right, from just short health talks all the way up to actual training programs.
That's wonderful. I mean, I imagine lots and lots of caregivers would benefit from this, particularly those listening right now. But they may be thinking, to Glenn's point, time is the most precious commodity they have.
They probably have to be caring for the person themselves, right?
I'm trying to think of my mother. She would think, I'd love to do it, but I don't know where I would find the time.
How
so
do you get away?
how would that work? How does it look?
Yeah, I mean, we when we looked at this, we also recognize that a lot of caregivers just are not able to leave, right, the home, for any extended period of time. So what we're going to be doing is actually through carebuddy.co, we're going to be like hosting like talks, right, online, easily accessible on your handphone. Then of course community training programs and all that for people who can, find the time to come out. And yeah, that's something that we're just hoping to do. And our internal target is really, can we reach out, to 100,000 people in Singapore, whether they're formal caregivers or maybe they're just supporting the caregivers in their families. I think more knowledge, more skills will empower people, allow them to stay independent for as long as possible, because that's a very key concept that we're trying to promote. Right. And instead of trying to take over everything, of course, in the cases where it's possible, right, help your loved one maintain their independence, help them keep their skills, their do their daily activities. How do you change the environment around them, right, to enable and motivate, right? Because actually, of course, caregivers are a very wide range. It's very hard for us to address every single one's individual needs. So we are going to start really focusing on, elderly care, aged care. And of course, over time, we'll expand that to other segments of caregivers as well.
Well, that ties in nicely. Pin Pin Chia, one of our listeners, has said, I lost weight caring for my father when my helper went on home leave. Very serious issue. I'm glad you brought it up. Aging population is arguably the number one social issue we have in Singapore, dealing with the elderly in society. You did say there that there are many different symptoms and illnesses, could be dementia, Alzheimer's, loss of physical mobility. So broadly, when you're dealing with the elderly, what key areas do you look at?
So we look at, like, I guess when in healthcare, we always focus on quality of care. Right. So that's, medical, it's healthcare related. And that's something, I guess, the healthcare organizations and the healthcare professionals are trained to do. I think what we're trying to also promote, within the informal care sector, right, which is actually people at home, is really focusing on, of course, quality of care, following, the instructions that the doctors and nurses give them, but to really focus on quality of life. Right. And when we look at quality of life, we look at different dimensions. We look at physical, right? Physical health. We look at mental, we look at social, and we look at functional. Yeah. So can you do the things that you normally do? Yeah. Right. And, not to be too healthcare about this, but in healthcare, we do look at, activities of daily living. There's scoring behind it so that, the care providers will actually know what support, right, that the care recipient will need. So that's something that we're trying to break down into more simple, straightforward, non-healthcare jargon way. Right. And that's something that we are working with, the partners that I shared earlier, right, to pull the knowledge together and to put it in a way that is much easier to understand from somebody without any healthcare training.
We're in conversation with the Chinwei Jia, Group CEO of HMI Institute of Health Sciences. The hard question that comes up is, at a certain point, people need more help than they can get at home, even from a qualified healthcare giver. Do you offer any kind of advice or structure to help people make that decision when enough is enough? For example, we often see older couples caring for each other, and becoming codependent, and many times that is honestly a recipe for disaster, because as you're older, you just don't have the energy, and the wife's taking care of the husband, or vice versa. I saw this happen with my own parents, and it was just hard to get them to move into a facility to get that sort of help. In these new programs, is there a segment where you are helping people understand or recognize some of the signs of, hey, when it's time to make a harder decision about where somebody's going to live?
Well, I think, for us, as healthcare providers ourselves, I'll say a lot of times, have that conversation with your doctor or your nurse, right, on what your loved one can or cannot do. Yeah. Right. And they will share with you advice, because it's just, like what Neil said earlier, they know the range of support that's needed is actually very broad, and it's really hard to pinpoint. So my own advice and what I do with my own family members, right, is really we sit down, we talk together, we get inputs of the doctors that care for them, right, and then
advice.
Collectively, just have an open conversation. I know it's easier said than done because everyone has their opinion. However,
sometimes
I think
the elders are quite resistant. They don't want to move to a facility or
That's
someplace, right? They want to
Yes.
stay at home.
Exactly. And if you are able, right, to I guess fulfill the wishes, right, of your parent or grandparent to do what they want, then how do you modify the environment? How do you bring in train help, or how do you train yourself, right, to play that support role, and then work with home care providers or others to supplement, right, so that they can also help make sure that appropriate care is actually being delivered. So I mean, it's really a multifactorial discussion, and having gone through that personally myself, I know how difficult it can be, but at the same time also how important it is. And it's not just one conversation, it's actually conversations over a period of time.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about volunteers that you'd like to get involved with a social enterprise. I'm sure hopefully some folks listening might want to get involved with such a worthwhile thing. What does that look like, this volunteer sign-up contribution? How does that look?
Well, what we're hoping to do is through, a lot of the social service organizations on the ground, we want to actually reach out to a pool of volunteers. We want to train them to be trainers. Because I think, if we want to, touch, 100,000 lives, that's something where we actually need, a really big, like, ground up movement. And so we're going to do train the trainers. We're going to train volunteers directly. We're also going to be training caregivers directly. And, because all caregivers have different needs for information and knowledge, right? I mean, what one caregiver needs will be different from what somebody else needs. So we're going to do short programs, talks, things like that. I mean, if you're interested, please definitely reach out to us. Go to our HMI Institute website, to find out more about what we're doing, and reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to work with organizations or individuals, right, to spread this message.
And just finally, briefly, if I'm listening right now, I think I need a bit of help with my parents. Where should I go first to get this ball rolling?
Well, I think first of all, go to your healthcare professional. I think that's always the best advice as a first step. And if you are looking just for general knowledge to support yourself, I mean, carebuddy.co right now has some articles, but we're actually still developing the site with our partners. It's going to be launched next year. But in the meantime, if you want to really learn skills like how to do it, we have courses on that on the HMI Institute website.
So it's HMI-IHS.com?
That's correct.
Yeah. HMI. Okay, awesome. Hey, thank you very much. Such an important topic in our aging society, and one that often we as lay people just don't know how to deal with these issues. So it's great to have a resource like yours.
And I just want to thank you for such a positive, uplifting story after what's been a difficult first hour. So thank you. We've got some positive news in the community. We love it.
Indeed. Chin-Wei Jia, Group CEO of HMI. Thanks for being with us on Money FM.
Thank you so much.
Singapore Homebrew on Money FM 89.3. on Money FM 89.3. Traffic.
And there's been a vehicle breakdown on the SLE towards the BKE before Woodlands Avenue 12 exit. It's calmed down a little, which is good. Roadworks all over the island, though, so drive carefully there. On the causeways, Woodlands, 38 minutes into JB, 19 into Singapore. And at the Tuas Second Link, 38 minutes into Johor and 19 minutes into Singapore. So drive carefully, drive safely, and keep it right here on Money FM 89.3.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome back to Saturday mornings on Money FM 89.3, 1039. On your Saturday morning, the rain is still with us across the island. Please do be careful as you're traveling about. It is supposed to clear later on in the day, but we still have wet roads and need to take caution around all of those wet spots today. Hey, Neil, many companies now, because of their CSI and their ESG programs, trying to figure out how to decarbonize. And it's everything from reducing what they do within their, let's say, office or their factory, but increasingly people are trying to figure out how to decarbonize their supply chain as well, because it's not just enough. Many boards of directors are requiring that they look further afield to figure out how to be carbon neutral across their manufacturing and supply chain. It's a real problem, right? Because a lot of times you don't know where stuff's coming from or what's happening behind the scenes. A company called Terrascope looks very closely at doing that, and they try to figure out the how behind decarbonization in the supply chain using data to figure that out as well. We are joined now by the CEO of Terrascope, Maya Hari, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about that. Maya, great to see you. Welcome to Money FM.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me, Glenn and Neil. Lovely to see you this morning.
Absolutely. So give us a little more depth on Terrascope and what the need is right now and how you guys are fulfilling it.
Yeah, we set out to build Terrascope as an end-to-end decarbonization platform. But if you step back, really the reason to do this started from wanting to really think about preserving the durability of businesses, where businesses over the last few years have been very focused on financial growth and financial return, and not necessarily have thought about what is the long-term impact of the planet warming up, right? And whether there is a need to connect the dots between growth of business and things like floods that happen or disruptive behaviors like glaciers melting, etc. So in a way, this whole area of focus around ESG and focus around decarbonization has come about to build that type of durability for business. So at Terrascope, what we're doing is we're actually working with large enterprises as well as companies that are smaller parts of different supply chains to be able to help them think about what is that journey to be able to go from where you are today to a net zero state. And what net zero really means is that you're not necessarily adding carbon emissions to the world and to the environment over time just through your operations or through your supply chain. So that's the stated intent. How we're doing this is the starting point is that we work with companies to be able to take in a lot of data that exists inside the company today, whether that's financial data, whether that's ERP data or business activity data. And we're taking that and essentially matching it to different emission measurement factors and saying, okay, what is the total emission impact of your company? And where is it coming from in the company or in the supply chain, which helps people say, what do I do next?
Yeah. Well, let's focus on that, Maya. You make a fantastic point. Companies can no longer just focus on growth, financial growth for its own sake. It's not sustainable for the planet in the long run. And I'm very interested to know what your thoughts on how you're dealing with the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 elements of the supply chain. Our friend of the show, Steve Okun, has spoken about this quite a bit in recent weeks and the role it plays in ESG. Tell us about that. Just recap for our listeners and viewers first what Scope 1, 2, and 3 mean and why the emphasis will be on Scope 3.
Yeah. For any company, there are different types of emissions that you're looking at. Scope 1 is essentially emissions that are directly attributable to operations that you are doing. So it's fairly, in your control to be able to change a lot of Scope 1 emissions. I'm not saying it's easy for manufacturing companies or others, but it's in your control.
And this would be things like factories and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Manufacturing, creation of things. The Scope 2 emissions typically are associated with energy sources, things you're leasing, etc. And so the more renewable energy you're using, for instance, put simplistically, means you have less Scope 2 emissions versus coal-based energy, right? Which is quite carbon intensive. When it comes to Scope 3, these are indirect emissions you're talking about. So emissions that you don't actually control very easily directly, but comes often from, for instance, from the supply chain. If you're procuring goods, if you're trading goods, how do you attribute the emissions to that? And that's sort of the big component of Scope 3. Now, why is that important, and increasingly so, is that for a lot of companies with supply chains, Scope 3 actually forms 85 to 90%, if not more, of your total emissions. So if it is that large, how can you ignore it, right? You cannot really think about getting to a path to net zero if 85, 90% of your emissions are coming from Scope 3.
Could you just give us an example of that? Sorry, and how Terrascope would come into that?
Yeah, so Terrascope essentially would take in a lot of data from different parts of the company that already exists. So this is data that you already have, nothing that you're creating new, but ingesting that data and starting to look at what parts of it are coming from where. So let's think about Scope 3 emissions, let's say from the supply chain. You might say that you're procuring certain goods from Brazil and you're procuring certain other goods from Indonesia. And how does the emission of these goods vary by geography, by type of good that you are procuring? And being able to ascribe a carbon number or a carbon quantum of impact of emissions to each of these line items, if you will, gives you the ability to say, where are my biggest hotspots, right? The 80-20 rule that we often talk about in business very much also applies to emissions that we see. In your Scope 3 emissions, you'll often see that a small number of activities that you're carrying out in your supply chain often contribute to a very large proportion of your emissions. And the opportunity there then is, once you have a dashboard that Terrascope is able to show you with hotspots of where your emissions are largest, how do you now take that and focus on the next step, which is the so what? How do I decarbonize? What are the actions I'm going to take to reduce that emission next?
We're talking with Maya Hari, the CEO of Terrascope. And Maya, do you then go that next step to help them figure out how, once you've figured out what they're doing and what their carbon footprint looks like up the value chain all the way to Scope 3, do you help them figure out how to reduce it then? Or do you pass that on to another organization to help them? Because that's a whole nother huge project to undertake for many companies.
Yeah, I think the way we look at ourselves as an end-to-end decarbonization platform is you have to start with measuring the carbon footprint. If you don't measure, honestly, you don't know what you're decarbonizing. But the very quick next step that Terrascope is able to help with is to sort of zone in on which are the specific areas and what would the next best actions be in those areas. Now, it may come out that you're let's say a food company and where you're sourcing from needs some changes in terms of the type of supplier, etc. That downstream action is certainly something that the company owns on their own. But we'd also we work very closely with an ecosystem of partners, right? We would bring in specific pinpoint consultant partners who would then say, what is that boots on the ground solution? If you need to go change the tilling methodology in a farm, how would you do that, right? And that's not something that is Terrascope's expertise, but what we do want is to have all of these initiatives and these actions then tracked back on the Terrascope platform via these partnerships, so that you can track as a company exactly what's going on where in the world in your teams, what's working and what's not, and are you actually making progress towards net zero. So I sort of look at us as a technology layer that connects end to end this decarbonization journey. But the saying of you want to go far, you go at it together, right? And this is
Yeah.
a very large, the decarbonization journey is a very large multi-decade journey that requires a collaboration of the ecosystem.
And that's the
Nice.
key point, isn't it, Maya? The collaboration. Slightly more contentious question. Do you get the collaboration? I mean, for example, your wonderful tech will highlight the issues with Scope 3, will highlight where they need to decarbonize. But I'm just using any example. Say it was a restaurant chain producing sushi, and they know that the bycatch of sushi alone can kill up to 145 other marine mammals. I'm just using that one example as of the bycatch of the sushi. But they're a sushi restaurant chain. They can only get their food source from the ocean, despite the huge carbon footprint involved. What can they realistically do in that situation?
Yeah, I think the fact that you would know that the bycatch is a big contributor to that emissions would be the starting point. The
Right.
procurement teams are having to be very innovative in thinking about, therefore, what do you do? Do you find farms and alternatives that are actually more responsibly farming seafood? Do you go to alternatives that are being developed in the market now that are, that are alternative seafood options and things like that? Now, these are things that require a fair amount of time to be able to change an entire supply chain for a sushi restaurant. But if you don't start today, how do you make progress within the next months or years, right? And so I think that it is a joint journey, not only between, let's say, the sushi chain and a company like Terrascope, but it's also the other players in the ecosystem who are able to provide those solutions of responsible cultivation or other things like that.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we're talking with Maya Hari, the CEO of Terrascope, about decarbonization in supply chains. Maya, where are the I don't want to simplify this too much because I know it's very complex, but where are the easy wins, the simple wins, the fast wins in this process? I get that first you have to understand what the scope of the problem is, which is where you definitely come in. But for our CEOs or our senior managers listening right now, where do they start this to get the quickest, fastest start they can in this process if they've not already started it?
And just to add to that, I disagree with Glenn here. I think the simple, easy wins are the best way to get the ball rolling. It's when you think it's such a big thing that it's beyond you. It's the simple wins that matter. I agree completely.
Could be. Yep.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to feel like there's success along that journey. There's progress along that journey, right? And I think we always start with saying, what you don't measure, you don't know how to manage. So I think getting the very first step of getting people to commit to measuring becomes important. Once you actually measure, the very next step becomes, are you going to publicly announce that you are setting a target to net zero, right? Because there's a very beautiful thing about getting started on the journey, because then you sort of feel like you need to resource with knowledge inside the company and you need to make progress. And so a lot of companies you start to see are on this journey of setting what we call the public targets. One such target is a Science-Based Targets Initiative, SBTI. And so you start to see companies set SBTI targets and commit to getting to net zero by 2050. Once you put a public statement out there like that, it's very hard to walk back, right? Then you start to walk the talk and start to say, okay, which are my quickest wins? Is that sort of tackling renewable energy with Scope 2? Is that actually taking my biggest hotspot in Scope 3, whether that's packaging for a beverage company and sort of changing that to a more responsible packaging? These are real examples we've seen play out, right? And but I always encourage companies to say, do the first measurement, get comfortable knowing what your baseline is. It's an iterative process. It's a multi-decade process. But the minute you measure, you sort of say, comes what's next, right? And then you start to disclose publicly, and then you're on a journey. You're on a journey not just with you within the company, but with your customers, with consumers who may be consuming your product, with your bankers and your financiers, with your investors, who are all sort of looking at how this journey is going to play out.
Yeah. I mean, on a broadly philosophical level, I'm sure everyone would agree we have to do it. We have no choice. Let's deal with the Kiyasu question. The Kiyasu boss, yeah, great. How much is this going to cost me? Bottom line, I'm not here to save the planet. I'm here to make my company profitable. How do you deal with that?
I mean, you have to deal with that, right? There's no building a business without having a value proposition in terms of a business case. I think the simple answer that people would like to have is you can do this cost neutral, right? And often what we see is that there are some low-hanging fruits on the decarbonization journey that could be as such, but generally it requires an investment of effort, time, and resources to be able to do this journey. So unfortunately, it's not as easy an answer that people might like to hear, but I actually flip it to the reverse. What is the cost of not doing this, right?
Absolutely.
And that's when the value equation becomes very, very clear. When you start to see, Singapore, as an example, talking about what the long-term carbon tax and the carbon pricing is going to look like, it becomes very clear that you have a few years to be able to adjust to the transition, but there is going to be a cost of doing business without thinking about the implication to planet. So that's
easier to get going on the journey now in
Exactly.
measured steps than have it hit you over the head later. Yeah.
Exactly.
And Maya, just one last quick question. Big companies, small companies, can anybody, I get that the huge multinationals would need this and want this, but what if it's an SME in Singapore, can they get started on it? And again, will it be something that they can be affordable for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Both the large enterprise and the SMEs are critical. The large enterprises are among the biggest emitters in an economy. So they really need to decarbonize to be able to drive large impact. But who's in their supply chain? It's the SMEs that are in their supply chain, who are part of the supply chain. And so the SMEs need to go on this journey too. We recently announced this week a partnership with DBS Bank as we together try to think about what is the support needed for the ecosystem to go decarbonize, and what should be green sustainability linked lending, and how does a platform like Terrascope support that journey that a large corporate or a small and medium enterprise needs to go through. So Glenn, to your question, I think the answer is both sides of that spectrum need to play that journey, and there are different types of solutions for each, but I always say there's an investment now, but it's probably a smaller investment than the cost of doing business later.
Yeah. Where do they find you, Maya, if they want to get more information from Terrascope and what you could do?
Yeah, we're on terrascope.com, and we're also on social media on LinkedIn. So very easy to find us on either of these two places.
Awesome. Maya Hari, CEO of Terrascope. Thanks for being with us today on Money FM. Appreciate it. Great effort. And we'll check back in with you in the coming months to see how it's going.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Maya.
Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 noon every Saturday. Only on Money FM 89.3. You're cruising through your weekend on Money FM 89.3. Times.
Good morning. I'm Xiao. Monsoon rains are expected to hit the country from next week. The confirmation of names that will appear on the ballot papers is expected before noon today. FairPrice is set to offer a 1% discount for 500 commonly bought items for the first half of 2023 in all its physical stores as well as its online platforms. The discounted items consist of both house brand and non-house brand products and includes rice, oil, meat, and household cleaners. FairPrice said that the discount will allay concerns about rising cost of living, adding that it is meant to offset the GST increase from 7% to 8% that starts in January 2023. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said Britain's budget this month will help the Conservative Party regain some of the trust that was lost during his predecessor's disastrous time as Prime Minister. In an interview with The Times, Mr. Sunak sought to emphasize his credentials and denounce Liz Truss's mini-budget at the end of September as quote-unquote a sugar rush. The November 17th budget would be fair and compassionate, he said. Sunak also sought to deflect comments by Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey that Britain's damaged credibility has resulted in the Treasury paying a premium on borrowing costs. A new study by Pfizer and BioNTech suggests that their updated COVID-19 booster is better than its predecessor at increasing the antibody levels of people older than 55 against the most common version of the virus circulating now. Federal officials are hoping that the encouraging results will improve what has so far been a dismal public response to the retooled shots. Only about 8% of Americans aged 55 and older have received the new boosters from Pfizer and Moderna since they were introduced in September. The companies said that 1 month after getting the new booster, clinical trial participants older than 55 had antibody levels that were about 4 times as high as those who received the original booster. As widely forecasted, Elon Musk has wielded the axe on Twitter employees across the world, including Singapore. Though it is unclear how many Singapore employees were laid off, the Straits Times understands that the job cut spanned various teams, including the engineering, sales, and marketing teams. And in an internal email seen by the Straits Times, the company said the cuts are an effort to place Twitter on a healthy path. A second email later notified employees of their fate. To sport, and football's governing body, FIFA, has written to all 32 competing teams at the upcoming World Cup, telling them to now focus on the football, following a controversial build-up. Host nation Qatar has been criticized for its stance on same-sex relationships, its human rights record, and its treatment of migrant workers. The letter urges that football should not be dragged into ideological or political battles, and it should not be handing out moral lessons.
Those were your news headlines from the Straits Times. This is Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station. Time check on Money FM 89.3. Weather.
The Met Service is calling for rainy conditions to clear in the coming hours, and we should have a partly cloudy afternoon across the island. High today will be around 30 degrees, low overnight 24 degrees. For tomorrow, Sunday, expect afternoon thundery showers with a high of 34 degrees. That's your Money FM 89.3 weather. Enjoy your weekend.
Traffic.
Here's the traffic at 11:05. Heavy traffic on Thompson Road towards SLE after Kampong Java Road. And there's been an accident on the TPE towards the SLE after Pongal Road exit, with congestion until Pongal Road exit. Avoid lanes 2 and 3. On the causeways, Woodlands, it's piling up, folks. 43 minutes into Johor now. Looks very wet and stormy as well. 21 minutes into Singapore. Twas second link, 43 minutes into JB and 18 minutes into Singapore. The rain is persisting. So drive carefully, drive slowly, and keep it right here on Money FM 89.3.
If you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. Helping you grow your money on Money FM 89.3. Money FM 89.3. Financial updates from the Business Times.
I'm Chua Tian Tian with some of the market stories that made the headlines this week. The US Federal Reserve has raised interest rates by 0.75 of a percentage point yet again on Wednesday to keep runaway inflation in check. Now, the move, which was widely expected by markets, took the short-term borrowing rate from near zero in March to a range of between 3.75 and 4%, the highest level since January 2008. Now, going forward, the Fed said its battle against inflation will require borrowing costs to rise further, but signaled that the central bank may be nearing an inflection point in what has become the swiftest tightening of US monetary policy in 40 years. Speaking at a news conference after the policy meeting, Fed Chair Jerome Powell made the point that even if policymakers do scale back future increases, they were still undecided as to just how high rates would need to be to curb inflation and were determined to stay the course until the job's done. And Singapore will work with the central banks of France and Switzerland to use wholesale central bank digital currencies to make cross-border transactions faster and safer. Called Ubin Plus, the project will explore the exchange and settlement of Swiss franc, euro, and Singapore dollar wholesale central bank digital currencies. Speaking at the Singapore FinTech Festival on Thursday, the Monetary Authority of Singapore's Chief Ravi Menon said the move came on the back of the success of Project Ubin, which started in 2016. Now, from 2016 to 2020, Project Ubin explored the use of blockchain and distributed ledger technology for clearing and settlement services. And finally, let's take a look at how the Singapore stock market ended the week. Singapore shares recovered some ground on Friday alongside most regional peers after a rout sparked by the Federal Reserve's half-hearted dovish stance. The Straits Times Index rose 0.9% to 3,130 points as traders struggled for value after Thursday's sell-off. Some 1.65 billion securities worth 1.26 billion Sing dollars were traded on the local bourse as gainers outpaced losers 347 to 218. It has ended in positive territory 4 of the 5 days, with the STI having gained 2.3% over the week. And that's your finance wrap on Money FM 89.3. I'm Chua Tian Tian.
Those were your financial updates from the Business Times. This is Money FM 89.3, Singapore's most influential radio station.
What are you searching for?
Cash.
In your documents?
In my insurance documents. Instead of surrendering, I can sell my insurance policies to Reps Holdings for higher value.
Wow! Sell them to Reps Holdings?
Yes, they're the most reliable and a trusted pioneer in the industry. What are you searching for?
My insurance documents.
Just call 6221-4771 to get a free quote with an awesome service.
What is the number again?
Call 6221-4771 now.
Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome back to the show. Glenn Van Zutphen and Neil Humphreys with you, kicking off our 11 o'clock hour, 11:09 here on a rainy Saturday morning in Singapore. And Neil, cruising through the newspaper today, a couple of interesting stories.
Yeah, I have to say, if anyone's got the Straits Times, the back page of the Life section has just done a photo display of the ongoing exhibitions at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington. Now, to my shame, I haven't been there. You have. I have been to other museums in Washington.
It's a brilliant
But
museum.
I'll just hold it up for the benefit of those who are watching on StreamYard, and I'll mention it. They've got the original Apollo 11 shuttle there. The capsule.
Mm-hmm.
The Apollo 11 capsule. They've got Neil Armstrong's space chute. They've got the Wright brothers 1903 famous Wright flyer, the first time mankind took flight.
Yeah.
these extraordinary
I
planes.
think they'll have one of Amelia Earhart's planes. Obviously, not the last one she was flying
Yeah.
in.
But
yeah.
full-size planes hanging down from the ceiling, TWA, Eastern Airlines, various jumbos, and it's just extraordinary. It's on the back page of the Life section today. I haven't been. I will go now I've seen it. If you can get down there, just what a fabulous display. I mean, they do these things right at the Smithsonian.
It's interesting because many of our friends who travel to the U.S. from Singapore, the typical places are, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Boston, maybe Las Vegas. Often that's clipped on. But Washington, D.C. is really, really a must-see place. First of all, the architecture there is amazing, the way the city was laid out.
Yeah.
But if you go for no other reason than the museums are just brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Just absolutely brilliant.
Well, I took my daughter when she was 5 years old, and we did the Smithsonian, and we saw the original Judy Garland ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Fantastic. They do a lot of pop culture stuff. So it was like Fonzie's jacket from Happy Days, the original Kermit the Frog, the First Lady's dresses. I think Jackie Kennedy's stuff is in there. And, it's American history.
They call it America's Attic.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
And,
so
and it's
all
some
the stuff,
attic.
All the stuff that has been collected over hundreds of years ends up there, and it's the big red building. It's a castle. Is the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
And then of course they've built many other museums on the mall there in Washington along the Houses of Congress. It's just fantastic.
I have very quickly, it's in one of my books. I have a lovely story, quick one about the Smithsonian. I was waiting there on my own. This was when I went on my own. I did a junket to Washington. Those were the days. Remember junkets?
Junkets, yes.
Paid to fly to Washington. And I was there outside the Smithsonian before it opened. Early autumnal morning, beautiful. Guy taps me on the shoulder, breathless. I said, excuse me. Do you know where the toilet is? But no, I'm as new here as you are. Anyway, it turns out he was British. He was in his 70s, and I later found out he was on his own. He had recently been widowed, and he was part of this thing they do in the UK, or at least they did then. Wonderful charity where veterans were paid to go back to places they served in World War II. I can't remember the exact name, might be Veterans Return or something. Great initiative, great charity. So that's what he did. He was widowed and he traveled the world on this charity thing. And he went to America because he was stationed there. And he mentioned to me, I might go to Singapore, telling him I'm from Singapore, because I was stationed in Singapore after World War II. So, okay, fine. And we just made small talk and we went off around the Smithsonian. 9 months later, I get a telephone call in Singapore. Hello, it's Cliff.
Oh,
like, Cliff who? The guy who needed to pee outside the Smithsonian.
You gave him your number?
Yeah, because he was such a sweet guy. He was a widowed guy. He was a veteran. And I said to my wife, do you remember I mentioned that guy from 9 months ago? He's here now.
He just called me.
So honestly, it was a beautiful day. I met up with him outside the Cathay building because he remembered that from World War II. It was one of the... And we went on this little walking tour around Clark Quay and Boat Quay, and he shared his memories of World War II. And it was absolutely beautiful. I wrote about him in the book, and it all started outside the Smithsonian because of his bladder. Wonderful.
Wow. There you go. Well, let's talk. Let's keep our travel theme going to Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. There's all these airplanes in there, of course. And let's travel to Dubai for our next segment. Lots of folks are getting out and about traveling, and that is one of the locations that I know personally a lot of friends have been to in recent months. Joining us now is Rashid Al Arha, the country manager for Singapore and Brunei for Emirates Air. And Rashid, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you, Glenn. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks. How are you?
Oh, we're doing great. It's a nice, cool morning, rainy morning. Good morning to stay inside and listen to the radio, we hope, for lots of folks out there. Rashid, why don't we start first with give us an overview. What's happening in Dubai? I know a lot of folks have been traveling there in the last couple of months as we've all been revenge traveling and getting out. What's the status of tourism there in the Emirates?
Dubai has been booming, actually, since Expo 2020 concluded in March this year. I think the momentum kept on going, and with the border restrictions eased and basically Dubai opening its doors to tourism again, the numbers have boomed. So from January until September, Dubai have received over 10 million visitors, which is almost fourfold of what we've received for the same period last year. So there's a lot for Dubai visitors to see and look forward to in the city. Many attractions, the Burj Khalifa. We have the new Museum of the Future, which has come up in February this year. It's a marvelous architectural masterpiece. You were talking about the architecture in Washington, D.C. I think there's a lot in Dubai for you to enjoy. There's also a focus on the outdoors, especially that this time of the year the weather is great. We call it the winter, but it's like spring weather. So you're just a few minutes away from the desert, from the beaches. We organize desert safaris over there for people who are visiting Dubai for the first time. There are also sites in Ras Al Khaimah and the eastern Emirates, where if you like glamping, if you like rock climbing.
Because you can get out into the desert and really get that experience out in the wadis and different things. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
Rashid, you are the country manager for Emirates, for Singapore and Brunei. What numbers or trends are you seeing out of Singapore with regards to Emirates and travel to that part of the world?
It's safe to say that Singapore has restored almost to the pre-pandemic levels in terms of passenger numbers. I believe Changi Airport is, I believe Changi Airport is at almost 60% of its capacity. We are operating 3 daily flights. As of the 30th of October, we've introduced our 3rd daily. We're also currently operating 1 A380 from the 3 flights, and we're going up to 2 A380s in December. So these are old signs. These are old signs of great recovery that Singapore has witnessed since the border reopening.
Rashid, if I can just ask you on that great boom that you're noticing into the Emirates, are those visitors who are going and staying in the Emirates, or are they passing through, going to Europe or going elsewhere? And I know obviously Dubai is a huge transit point for a lot of folks.
There's a huge increase in the Dubai passenger numbers. However, given the model that Emirates follows in the world, we follow the hub and spoke model. So our main aim is to connect people through Dubai to the rest of the world. Dubai remains our top destination out of Singapore. So this hopefully answers your question. But also destinations in Europe and the US. We're also seeing passengers going to new places, such as North Africa, Casablanca. There's traffic to Angola. And it's the different segments in the market that's being activated. And the pent-up demand, I believe, not only for Emirates, but for all carriers operating into Singapore has been great.
And Rashid, I'm guessing the data for this will probably be anecdotal, but are you seeing more business flights or tourism flights or combination of the two? How's it shaping up?
But Singapore traditionally has given us a good portion from every segment. So we see business travel coming back, and this is translated through corporate travel, which we can track and see. But we also see a return for group travel, which are the tours operated by or organized by the tour operators. We see a lot of leisure happening, definitely, and premium leisure in specific. And the numbers specifically in the premium cabins have been phenomenal. So we're basically seeing growth from all of the segments in the market.
No, that's great. We are speaking with Rashid Al Ardha, the country manager for Singapore and Brunei with Emirates Airlines. Rashid, I remember years and years ago, it's probably maybe 10 years ago or more, that I flew to Dubai on a business trip on Emirates, and I was so impressed because, first of all, I was flying economy class, which I couldn't afford to fly anything out more than that. But the economy class was so comfortable, and the in-flight systems were amazing,
very good.
And in those days, and I'm sure you do now, you had the cameras both in the front and looking down, for takeoff and landing and whatever. And I just remember at that moment, that was one of the early, I think, airlines in this region that were doing the cameras forward facing and downward facing. And I just thought that was really fun. It's a fun way to pass the time. Of course, many airlines do that now. But when you look at what's happening with Emirates and your in-flight entertainment and things like that, are there changes around that recently? Would there be new experiences that people haven't had if they haven't flown during the pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Our ICE entertainment system, which is the best in the sky today, offers over 5,000 channels to the passengers in all cabins.
5,000?
Yes.
You did say 5,000.
5,000.
5,000 channels.
5,000 in multiple languages. So you will find shows in the different dialects of India, for example, Chinese, obviously English, Arabic, and many other languages. The ICE system in itself, the content that you see is always the newest movies that are out there. There are radio shows, there are TV series. So there's a lot to see. And just to add to what you've mentioned earlier about the cameras, we've also added a camera on the tail, so you can see a bird view from the aircraft you're on. So I think there's a lot that we offer, not only for premium, because we focus on all our passengers and the comfort in all cabins, and to make sure that you get the value that you're expecting with Emirates and that you're paying for.
Yeah,
I concur completely about the in-flight entertainment on Emirates. I'm not. No one's paying me to say this, but I've always believed it's been very cutting edge. Rashid, I must tell you this. It's just occurred to me. My mother has only ever flown business class once, and it was on Emirates. She was flying to see me, and she got upgraded, and she was calling me, messaging me from the plane saying, "I've got a tablecloth. I've got a tablecloth. Neil, I've got a tablecloth." And so Emirates in our house is known as Tablecloth Airlines because she's never, and I've never flown business class. She's the only person in our family to fly business class, and it was on Emirates. I've never forgot that. Tablecloth Airlines.
Boy, don't get her started on the salt and pepper shakers.
Well, she stole most of them. No, she didn't. She didn't. But I'll bring it back to a serious question, which is, my mother still talks about it. The consumer experience is so important. How has that changed or evolved post-COVID? What are you seeing that travelers like my mother are looking for and asking for now?
Now, just to highlight something that we've just embarked on, we are retrofitting 120 of our over 260 aircraft fleet. It's a $2 billion project. It'll take a year and a half to complete. We are upgrading these aircraft with the latest premium economy that we've introduced recently. The in-flight dining experience, the cabins themselves, the seats are all going to be upgraded. It's the biggest retrofit project any airline has ever embarked on. And given we're the largest international airline in the world, this is absolutely important for us, because the focus, our customer-centric focus is the basically most important thing for us. So upgrading the in-flight experience is crucial. So we made sure that we are ahead of the game, and we're anticipating what our customers may want in the future.
Rashid, sorry if I can just jump in. I know that the premium economy is now being preferred by many business travelers because companies will not always let them fly business class because of corporate policies around cost and all that.
Especially post-COVID.
Especially post-COVID, right? But many will allow, especially in the region, economy or premium economy. And is that part of this shift to upgrade that you are doing now with your premium economy, looking more toward that business consumer? I know my family and I were, we will sometimes opt for premium economy if it's a long haul flight, just for the comfort factor, when we couldn't afford to put the whole family in business class, right? So what's the thinking around why this multi-billion-dollar change and upgrade is so important?
I believe it's a question that's been posed to Emirates for years, since other airlines started introducing this product, and we believe it was a segment in the market that needed to be addressed. And when we decided to do it, we decided to do it right, meaning we created a product that is right in the middle between the two experiences of the economy class cabin and the business class cabin. And to be honest, me being a loyal employee and a lover of the Emirates product, I would say as a fan that the product in premium economy is closer to business than it is to economy. Unlike most of the products that you will see in the market, we have diamond stitched seats and leather, the seat pitches, the recline, the leg room, the size of the screen, your tray table, you have a cocktail side table. The product that when we decided to offer this product in the market, the product itself is a great product, and I think by far excels versus all other premium economy products that are offered today.
Sounds comfortable.
So I haven't flown on a premium economy flight yet. However, I've tried the seat. I've had the chance, and I.
Can we get some of those in the Can we get some of those in the studio here, Rashid? Because these stools that we're on are so uncomfortable.
Rashid, we're more than happy. We're more than happy to record the show from your premium economy seats. We can work something out, as long as I get a tablecloth to keep my mother happy. I must get the tablecloth.
Sounds like
Rashid.
It's a great idea, actually. Maybe we can do something like this when we bring it here to Singapore.
I think just having the studio sponsored by Emirates and just get the chairs in here alone, I would be satisfied with that. I'm looking at some of the pictures online.
My mother would expect nothing less. She's a business class traveler on Emirates. She expects nothing less on tablecloth airlines. But just moving ahead, Rashid, just moving ahead. So you're bringing in more of these premium economy seats. I think it's a wonderful initiative. I agree with Glenn's point. Post-COVID, I think more business travelers will be using that option. What other changes do you foresee in the travel aviation industry in the next 12 months post, as we step out, hopefully, from COVID?
I believe the travel will continue to go strong because all of the indicators that we see today tell us that the numbers are great, but we also see some new consumer trends. People are traveling longer distances. They're going to new places. They're spending more. Obviously, with the fuel prices, going up drastically, and ticket prices as a result also increasing with the high load factors, which automatically will give you higher prices on flights. We still see extremely strong demand, which is a great indicator for us. There's also interest in sustainability that came as a result of COVID, and passengers wanting to fly more sustainable airlines, greener airlines. So there are many initiatives that Emirates has embarked on. We haven't announced any commitment officially on carbon net zero because we are embarking on initiatives of trying SAF, but we want to be 100% sure that this is achievable before we commit to anything like this. So
Well,
today,
we know those are important positions to take these days. Everybody,
absolutely,
especially the airline industry. Rashid, we do have to leave it there, but just briefly, when will the new premium economy seats be available from Singapore to Dubai?
If everything goes as per plan, 1st of March 23, Singapore will receive the first premium economy aircraft, which is going to be an A380. We have 56 seats on board.
Wow.
The formation is a 242 formation, which is, I think, a passenger favorite for these cabins. And just to highlight that Singapore is one of the first destinations to receive this. We're operating it currently to London Heathrow, Sydney, and Paris. New York, JFK is getting it. San Francisco is getting it. Melbourne,
Nice.
Auckland, and Singapore are getting it next. So this will all take place from December until March next year.
Wonderful. So we'll see you in the first week of March when Glenn and I will record the show from the cabin with my mother sitting at the next table with her tablecloth.
We'd love to meet her. We'd love to meet her. Really.
All right,
Yep.
Rashid Al Adha, the country manager for Singapore and Brunei at Emirates. Appreciate your time today. Good luck with the new premium economy and all the other tourists heading up to Dubai.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks.
You're cruising through your weekend on Money FM 89.3. on Money FM 89.3. Traffic.
And we have a vehicle
If
breakdown.
you see anything on the roads that we might have missed, you can share it with us via.
And we have a vehicle breakdown on the AYE towards Twas before Pioneer Road entrance. Avoid lane 4. Another vehicle breakdown on the PIE towards Twas after CTE City exit. An accident on the BKE towards Woodlands after KJE exit. Avoid lane 1 there. Heavy traffic on the KPE towards the ECP between Buangkok Drive exit and Tampines Road exit. That's near my house. Okay, and how are we doing on the causeways? About half an hour in both directions for Twas and Woodlands. So drive carefully there, drive safely, and keep it right here on Money FM 89.3.
SMS or WhatsApp at 8855-0893. But please send the message through only when you are safely parked. Saturday morning, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome back to Saturday mornings on Money FM 89.3, 11:36, pushing up toward our noon closing time. Good to see those. It's nice to dream about taking nice airplane trips, you know.
Well, you showed me the photographs.
Yeah.
And objectively, we're not being
of the new,
sponsored by
of the-
anybody.
of the
Yes,
new,
the Emirates premium
yeah.
economy seats. And for a guy who's 1.94 meters tall,
Yeah.
they look like heaven.
Oh,
They
it's
look like
fantastic.
heaven.
And space between them, and they're just really deluxe. So we'll look forward to when those arrive in Singapore next March. Okay, let's move on. As we talk about the globe, we have talked so much on this show about sustainability, about climate change, about what's happening. The first ever Ocean Collective Summit at 1°15 Marina in Sentosa closed out yesterday. Minister for National Development Desmond Lee was the guest of honor, talking about and being sponsored by the International Seakeepers Society and Fabien Cousteau. What's happening with our oceans? What's happening with climate change, especially as it relates to the oceans? Urgently important.
And more importantly, this particular event had a clear focus on how climate change is affecting Singaporean waters specifically.
Bring it close to home. And joining us now is Julian Chang, a board member of the International Seakeeper Society and president of the International Seakeeper Society Asia, and Jay Wade, chairman and president of the International Seakeepers. Gentlemen, great to have you both with us today. Jade, why don't we take it from the high view now? The Seakeepers coming to do this conference in Singapore. What was the imperative to have it here at this time?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us, guys.
You bet.
And I must say that the previous segment with Rashid and Emirates was fascinating. I can't wait to fly on them. So the reason that we had this here primarily is because Julian and Sandra in the Asian chapter, they saw a need and they saw an opportunity to spread the word about what we do at Seakeepers, which basically is we facilitate science. There's a lot of great science out there, and we facilitate that and help get it on the ground, get boots on the ground, and get action to happen. Kind of that's the key from my standpoint. Is we have a lot of talk. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about these issues around the world, and there's a lot of great science being done, but it doesn't really work until you get it on the ground in the places where it's needed. And so Singapore is a perfect opportunity to do that.
Well, Julian,
Nice.
let's bring you in now. I mean, this wonderful event, the Ocean Collective Summit, was originally initiated by the Seakeepers Society and Fabien Cousteau, of course, the famous aquanaut and ocean explorer. Julian, why was it important to you to have this event in Singapore? What are the problems or issues that have been addressed regarding Singapore's waters?
Well, it's a dream of mine to get basically it started off with because we were involved in Seakeeper getting the science. As we all know, that Singapore there's so many countries surrounding, and we're a little tiny dot. And I found that there's a lot of duplication of things going around different countries. So by bringing everybody together, we try and get them to say, hey, let's spend the same money and everybody share the data. So I think for the 2 days, amazing. I think Jay and me we were so glad we went out, get it done, and we got the results. And with that, Fabian is a good friend of mine, promised that he's going to come back again next year, and we're going to do a second round. and that's basically, we're so happy. I'm still
couldn't be happier.
You know.
And kudos to you, Julian, because I believe it. You were the one who really pushed for this to be held in Singapore. So thank you for doing that. Jay, let's just bring it back to you. What were some of the findings and discussions about the issues and problems around Singapore's waters?
Well,
Sure.
I
So
tell you, yeah, Jay will be a good guy sitting on top in the world and looking down at what's happening. Jay, yeah.
Over to you, Jay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Julian. So there's quite a few. There were so many great presenters at the symposium. Everything from the local educational organizations, or Polytechnic, and the work that they're doing at Sisters Island throughout this region of the world. Basically, and I don't know, Julian, maybe you might know, but we had representatives from multiple countries in the area, and they're a little bit different in every area. They have different things. So, for instance, in Bali, there was some coral restoration going on, and sea turtles in, I believe, is it Malaysia, Julian, and then it's all the usual stuff that you would expect. Mangroves in Bangladesh, that were the projects that were discussed, and it's just fantastic. I tell you, this is my first trip to Singapore, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I cannot wait to come back. It's been such a great experience. Probably because Julian and Sandra are such a great host to us, but truly, I have so much respect and really high hopes for our Asia chapter now.
And Julian, sorry, Julian, let me just
one.
bring it back to you.
Yeah, okay. All right.
And we're talking with Julian Chang, the board member in International Seakeepers, and Jay Wade, the chairman and president of International Seakeepers. And Julian, bring it back to you. What are our big challenges in Singapore? I mean, we know that the coral has been depleted. We know that animal species are under threat in our waters due to the shipping and the traffic and pollution and everything else. But from your perspective and Seakeepers' perspective, what are our biggest challenges right here, right now, that we need to be mindful of around Singapore?
Yeah. My real drive is to basically get our neighbors, all the countries around us, Singapore, to get together and look at the problem together, then rather than each individual country doing its own thing. Singapore being the center of the three-way current, we are getting waters from the east, from the north, from the south. We need to go out there and get our friends, neighbor, come. Let's sit down and see what we can do together, than rather being individual country doing their own thing.
Are they doing it? Are they getting that message, do you think?
Well, on this symposium, I could see I had a few different countries coming together now around here, and we are talking now. The scientists are talking together, and the corporation companies are gelling, and it's going to be amazing. I think it's the right way we should go.
Well, you had people speaking from the Coastal and Marine and Terrestrial Branch, the National Biodiversity Centre, NParks, Republic Poly, International Policy Division, the Ministry for Sustainability and Environment. I mean, you had all the big hitters at this conference. I mean, it was a really impressive effort to bring everyone together. Jay, I mean, just more broadly, what were some of the issues that you heard or saw highlighted, and possibly how they could be dealt with?
Well, I would say the biggest issue by far to me centers around sustainability. The problems in the ocean are driven in large part, almost exclusively, by the population on land. So what we do on land, and especially in an island nation like Singapore, for example, you have a very dense population here that puts a lot of pressure from the terrestrial pressure on the oceans. And so there's a bunch of ways that surfaces in the ocean, and there's a bunch of ways to mitigate it. Again, back to the mangroves, the seawalls, all the things that we saw, projects that we saw that are going on around Singapore. And I think the thing to me that was so heartening is that the people at the conference and the people that Julian got together, they're all doing stuff. They're all doing something about it. I mean, there's in every, everything from spirulina to the mangroves and reef restoration. And I mean, there were literally dozens of groups and organizations that are each doing their particular project, right? And they're all a little bit different. And they're all taking action to make the Singaporean waters better. And that just warms my heart. That's what we're all about.
Jay, we know that these conferences often happen and there's not a lot of concrete results that come out. And it's good that people get together and they talk, but at the end of the day, what's actually getting done? Jay just mentioned some of the projects that are happening, which is awesome. But really, is enough getting done fast enough? Because we can have conferences all till the cows come home, as my mom used to say. But if we're not actually getting stuff done and getting action taken, it's just a bunch of hot air. And I'm not saying this conference was at all. It's always good to get people together. But Jay, what are you saying? As results or targets?
Well, so we don't set Seakeepers, we don't set targets, so we don't do science ourselves. So our job is to facilitate science. So what we want to do is we want to take and find the most action-oriented organizations and then help them do whatever. I mean, they need all different kinds of things. Maybe money, maybe support, maybe a boat, whatever it is, and help them get in the field to get their job done. And again, I mean, it just runs the gamut. I'll just go back the mangroves, the seawalls, the coral restoration, the turtle hatchlings that they work with. And so there's just a variety of things. I'm leaving a bunch out, sorry, but again, I mean, to me, Singapore is about action. And as far as conferences go, you're exactly right. I go to these virtually every other week, and it's a lot of talk. And frankly, I mean, that has really pushed me to focus everything that Seakeepers can do to create action, to create action for people.
Fantastic. Julian, final question to you. You mentioned before, Singapore's in a unique position, lots of waters, lots of seas washed towards Singapore, if you like, which also brings a lot of rubbish and trash. Arguably, one of the biggest issues, certainly for Singaporean waters, is, of course, pollution. We see it every day. There are so many coastal cleanups. Was that an issue that was discussed at all in the last couple of days? Anyone talked about the pollution in our waters and what could be done about it?
Well, the results, I think, is that, nobody could have one sentence and say, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to clear. But bringing everybody together, our neighbors, they could see things are happening. It could be starting from your doorstep and in a friend's doorstep, things like that. And I think the main aim now is to get them together more often, speak to each other, and solve the problem with your neighbors. And I think that's what we need to do. We just can't do it alone. We just can't.
We certainly know that, Julian, and thank you so much for organizing this conference and working so hard to make sure that it happened. Jay, what's the next, thing that people can do if they want to support Seakeepers, either locally or globally? Where do they go to find you, and what can they do?
Sure. So the easy thing, if you're in Singapore, is the Seakeepers Asia. So contact Seakeepers Asia through their website, and Julian. And then for the international, it's seakeepers.org. Our website, we have everything listed, all the ways to help. There's a myriad ways to help. You can help financially. You can help with your with work and volunteering all over the world, and we would love to have you.
Fantastic. Our thanks to Jay Wade, the chairman and president of International Seakeeper Society, and Julian Chang, the president of International Seakeepers Society Asia. Great to have you with us. Congratulations on your successful Ocean Collective Summit. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Appreciate
thanks,
it.
Glad.
Having us
Thanks,
on.
Dale. Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Well done.
Have a good day.
Bye.
All right.
Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 noon every Saturday. Only on Money FM 89.3.
Few minutes of the show. Glenn and Neil with you for another few minutes or so, and it's so great to see people paying attention to our waters.
Absolutely. And look, you've
wrong
only
with
got to walk along East Coast Beach or Pongo, anywhere in Singapore, and we see what washes up the flotsam and the jetsam
it's
every
terrible.
day. And it's extraordinary. And it's not necessarily our fault. So the key point that Julian made over and over again is a valid one. Neighbors, neighbors, neighbors. We can have all the coastal cleanups we like. And our good friend, Siva Salty and others, Rob Salisbury, they're doing coastal cleanups, beach cleanups every other day. Tide comes back in and a whole fresh load gets dumped on our shores. He's right. It needs cooperation with the neighbors.
It's and we need people to take action. You know, like the talk is great, but we got to have people actually getting in there. And it was great to hear Jay talk about the things that are on the International Seakeepers website that people can do. They can get out there, they can contribute. I would imagine time and or money and or whatever.
I've posted the link. Seakeepers Asia. They want help. They want volunteers. They want support, and they want corporate support as well. And they had some corporates at the event. Good for them. The likes of City Private Bank and others. Happy to give them a shout out if they're putting their money where their mouth is.
You bet.
That's what you need. That's what you need.
All right. Hey, that's going to do it for the show today. What are you up to the rest of the weekend?
Writing. I'm writing a TV series that I got thrown at me last minute. I've got to write 3 episodes for that. Few other bits and bobs and running around. What about you?
Wow. Same. Yep.
You're writing a TV series.
Yeah. My kids are at the dentist right now. I'm going to pick them up and then we're going to go to lunch together.
Nice.
And and then just cleaning the house. And
because your wife is jet setting. She's all over the world.
She's been in the UK. She's in Dublin right now. Then she's flying to Sydney and then to Auckland, and she's all over the place. So I'm Mr. Mom for most of the month.
Good for you.
So we're going to do our best to keep Hearth and Home together.
And I just want to give a 10-second shout out. West Spring Primary School. I went there this week for a talk, which I often do, as you know. But what I loved about this school, from the moment I went in, warm, accommodating, empathetic, and shock horror. You see the difference in the students when you have that warm atmosphere to learn in.
What the heck are they thinking being
warm
and empathetic?
Doing? Carrot before the stick.
Come
what
on.
are they thinking? West Spring Primary School, fabulous.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yes, exactly right.
Oh, it is great to see that some of our schools are getting it right.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for being with us today. Always a pleasure to have you join us from 9 to 12, either on Facebook Live, on 89.3 FM, or our audio app. If you want to listen to any of our interviews again, they are all podcasts. They will be ready within the hour or so. Just Google Money FM Saturday morning podcast, and you will get all of them. You can download them. You can share them with your friends. You can do whatever you want with them. Of course, we hope you listen to them again. Lots of great folks on today. What was your favorite segment today?
Oh, I liked all of it. I had a lot of fun with Steve Okun today. I have to say we had 72 comments today. Most of them were Steve. But in all seriousness, a big thank you for all of our listeners in the cars and elsewhere, and also our folks on Facebook Live. They stick with us week after week after week. The comments keep coming. We are genuinely grateful.
Yep. Thankful to have all you with us, and we'd love to hear more about what you like to talk about. And
what do you like to talk about? What are you up
Yeah.
to? What are you not up to? What are you watching? What are you doing? And then we can channel this stuff.
We're
this,
very malleable.
I was going to say drivel, but that's too hard. No, but thank you very much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody stay safe. We'll talk to you soon.
You're cruising through your weekend on Money FM 89.3.